organizer, or you can mail us. So with this, I would request Bhuvneshwari to take on the session. Bhuvneshwari.
Yeah, thanks, Dinesh, and I hope I'm audible to all of you. A very warm welcome. The subject of knowledge management governance is definitely not new to all of us. And you have to give us a second here, please. Sorry about that. Yeah, knowledge management, of course, is not new to us since we're all KM practitioners. And knowledge management governance, again, is not very new to us. It's very good to see that, during the past couple of webinars that we've had, many of us shared, data on process. Some of us shared the internal, how we're practicing, KM, some of the tools, accelerators, why knowledge management is required, and of course, some part on the social media and things like that. But when you look at it, I mean, for a program to sustain, for a knowledge management practice to sustain, all of us would agree, and we're all in the same plane when we say that the one most important thing that we need to ensure is to have a very robust knowledge management governance system in place. Because without that, there would not be a sustenance of the entire program. So what we put together in this presentation is basically some of why we require knowledge management governance. What does it actually encompass? What is it that we need to look on as the criteria required to set a KM governance model or framework in place? How Tech Mahindra is actually doing this, what we have done so far, and how we are actually taking it forward. So most of what we're presenting here actually stems from our experience as knowledge management practitioners within the organization and some of the work that we have done for some of our customers outside of the internal and outside of the organization. So again, a warm welcome to all of you. So before we go ahead, the couple of questions that we keep asking ourselves on a periodic basis is, first of all, why, what does our business actually need? Now, what we have here are some pointers. These are not, exhaustive list, but more so, and all of you would be on the same plane when we're saying that business needs innovation. So how do we ensure that we are providing a very high quality, of business? What are the kind of values and, business value differentiators that we are providing to our customers? How much faster or better or cheaper, and how much more consistent our services are in terms of our delivery of services to the end customers? What is the type of collaboration that is required internally and externally to understand what needs to get done to achieve this, okay, and of course to what extent. So a very good understanding about that. What our business also requires is on a constant basis, the level of process improvement that we need to ensure on a periodic basis, and this is of course done to ensure that we have very efficient operations. The productivity and efficiency improvement in terms of how are we looking at achieving a very high level of business, to ensure, efficient services and products to our end customers. When you're looking at from a delivery optimization perspective, are we ensuring the right knowledge at the right place at the right time? And I think that of course, when you look at it from a KM perspective, is the crux of the entire matter. And of course, the question that all of us constantly ask ourselves is, where do we stand, in terms of, how do we stand apart from the rest? So what are our, what sets us apart from the rest? What provides us the competitive advantage? So when you're looking at, when you're looking at availability of the right knowledge at the right place, and we're talking about knowledge management, to look at an effective knowledge management system, and we've gone through this several times before, we need to ensure, a set of models, we need to ensure a set of process, we need to ensure a set of, frameworks and implementations and strategies and stuff like that. But the essence of establishing a very robust knowledge management system across any domain, across any organization, is to ensure that we have effective governance, because governance becomes the heart of a system. So whether we're actually discovering, we are in the discovery phase of establishing a knowledge management system, and we're looking at performing assessments and audits, and how we're studying, the organization's structures, what are the different type of knowledge assets that we have, or how are we identifying what is it that our stakeholders or that our actual, program needs to handle within the organization within given timelines, or what is the type of the infrastructures that we need to put in place and such like. But we still need to look at on the top level governance structure in terms of, do we have a knowledge management framework maturity model in place? Do we have the right set of roles and responsibilities to handle the tasks at hand? Is there a dedicated system for that? What kind of roles and responsibilities do these core teams have? How are we actually measuring and tracking what we are doing today to ensure that we are progressing quarter on quarter, month on month, and of course year on year? And how do we actually set certain targets and how do we measure ourselves against those targets and move forward? So what is a knowledge management maturity framework that we have in place for that, right? How do we assess the quality and the type of assets that are actually flowing into a KM system in terms of explicit knowledge being contained in one centralized system? And what is the type, and and how are we evaluating the tacit knowledge component, the core component, which takes which has a larger value in the entire KMS? And then of course, when we're looking at knowledge management strategy, are we also looking at, of course, how are we recognizing and rewarding contributors and people who share within the system? What kind of change management are we putting in place to ensure that there is a larger buy-in? Okay, and then of course the collaboration, how we collaborating with our different units, what kind of business intelligence frameworks we are putting into place, policies and such like. So all this, when you look at it, and even from an implementation, design and implementation perspective, which you would see on the left side of this particular slide, how are we actually governing all this to ensure that this knowledge management system is becoming more and more effective? It is good to have initiatives in place. It is good to have certain process in place. It's good to have one-on framework here and there. But unless, and all of you would agree, if you don't have an overarching governance mechanism, KMS will not sustain, right? So how are we actually constantly looking, evaluating, studying, and measuring what we are doing and how we are doing it to ensure sustenance in the long run? Today we are focusing on, say, explicit knowledge initiatives. Tomorrow we are looking at tacit knowledge initiatives. How are we actually responding to different markets? What are the different type of work that we are doing for different customers? How are we collaborating with vendors? How are we collaborating with partners? What is the inflow of knowledge that is coming from the market into the system and from the system into the market? All this, unless you have the overarching knowledge management governance framework, of course this will not sustain. And this is something that we have learned through the different phases of evolution of knowledge management that has happened, of course, within Tech Mahindra. And I'm sure that all of you would have gone through the same kind of thing in some form or the other. But for us, definitely it stems purely from our experiences that we have gone through within the system. So now, if you look at what is the role of knowledge management governance, Okay, this seems a very simple slide. Let's discuss this a little bit. So if the idea and the crux of the thing is to ensure a sustainable competitive advantage and to prove that, prove our value differentiators through the market time and again, I think in a knowledge-intensive organization, it's very important for us to know what we know, right? To understand, what we know is very important. And now, having understood that, how are we actually using that data? How are we using that knowledge? What context that is being actually used? What forms that knowledge is being used? When that knowledge is being used? And of course, when you're looking at it from a usage perspective, how much faster is this knowledge available to you? So in our previous webinars, somebody actually was talking about the process flip and those kind of things. So how fast these assets are made available to you in a given context helps us to ensure, one step, we're one step up in the ladder when you're looking for maintaining the competitive advantage. Of course, what type of assets, what context, and how fast you have it is, of course, the essence. And when you're doing all this, there's a lot of knowledge that is getting generated and that's getting shared internally. And this is the way in which the organization is actually able to respond well to the business environment. Great. Now we have all this in place. Now what? But of course, like we said before, and what we have also understood time and again is, unless we have those set of preemptive controls and we have constant feedback flowing into the system from the different stakeholders, from the system itself, from the different processes, from the different business contexts, be it sales, be it delivery, be it pre-sales, be it relationship, alliances, whatever, vendors and partners, we're not able to sustain the KM system the way it should be. So there is constant work, rework on our processes to ensure we have the right set of process hooks, to ensure that there is a smooth flow of and collaboration of knowledge happening across the organization. Okay. Now, so our understanding is that when you look at knowledge management governance, what does it lead to? It leads to an effective implementation of knowledge management strategies, because without having a knowledge management strategy in place, we would definitely have not been able to establish the level and of knowledge management practice that is happening within the organization today. And as we grow, our strategies improve, and our vision statements are in place, our goals to achieve those vision statements are in place, and above and beyond all, our governance becomes much more stronger and more stringent to ensure that we're able to sustain the strategy and constantly align it to the business at all times. So this is something that we're always working on. So this is what is actually helping us to maintain and sustain that competitive advantage, and this is what is actually helping the organization to respond very effectively to business transformation, because that keeps happening on a constant basis. Okay, so for us, the role of the KM governance is at this level. So it's always at the top level, and then of course it percolates down to process level, it percolates down to the people level, it definitely percolates down to the infrastructure management level. So there's a lot of performance and measures that go into each level to gauge constantly how we are faring on a regular basis. So our metrics that we have put in place are are on a monthly basis, are on a quarterly basis, and then we compute on a half yearly basis, and then of course based on the feedback we keep improving on our performance measures. Any questions for me? All right, if you have any questions, you can either park them or you can send me a chat message. So now if you look at slide 7, we just put a set of governing principles and the enablers. It's imperative that KM governance is always considering that there are a set of stakeholder needs and requirements that have to be met, and we need to ensure that when we're talking about KM governance, this is primary factor in deciding what is the kind of governance mechanisms that we want to put in place. So whether an organized governing body is going to suit the need, whether a set of metrics and measures are going to suit the need, whether it's just enough to have process and certain amount of process improvements in place, how much of automation is required, and so those kind of things. How do we evaluate over there? So when we're looking at then how are we implementing the integrated KM framework? Great. We've thought about putting KM practice, and then we've decided that we need to roll this out at the organization level. Next, what? So how are we actually implementing this? And again, from an organization perspective, what are the systems that are going to help us to ensure the sustenance of this program? So we will have set of processes and people and infrastructure and all the pillars of KM in place. Great, but then how do we sustain? So we go by that. And then, of course, how are we minimizing the risk to the KM strategy? I think that and a set of good controls, which we have just discussed, point 1 and 2. How are we putting that into place? Because that becomes the factor that will help the smooth functioning of the entire knowledge management system. So how are we ensuring the control? How are we monitoring the entire system? How are you, getting, your employees to comply? How are the, what's the level of process compliance? And to the entire knowledge management strategy or to the framework that you have put in place. To do all this, it's good to have a system in place. Theoretically, everything is good, but unless you have the right amount of leadership buy-in, and unless, of course, we ensure that KM becomes an integral part of the business strategy, and this is where we found that organizations today, several customers today that come forward, always say that, yeah, they have some KM in place. Okay, most of the KM that they have in place, finally comes down to the fact that they have maybe a technology platform on which they implement a document management system or a content management system in some form or the other, and they believe that to be this be all and the end all of knowledge management. Here we are saying that's not true, because knowledge management is, of course, and you would all agree here again, that it's definitely not about having a technology platform in place which becomes the critical enabler to the knowledge management system, but it's the actual practice and the governance of the practice that is the crux of the entire thing. So that is the essence. If you have a proper governance, you have a good strategy, and you're able to govern that strategy and implement that strategy, then irrespective of the technology platform, your entire knowledge management system can go forward. So what are those set of processes that you have in place that will actually enable this entire thing to go forward? What are the different policies and guidelines that you have put in place to ensure good, comfortable management of the infrastructure, guidelines for people to contribute, to share in the different forums, in the communities of practice, a lot of best practice sharing that happens, policies and the do's and don'ts, your information security, guidelines and such like. And what are those services that as KM core groups that you are giving to your internal customers and to your external customers? And what are those different applications that you have to ensure smooth functioning of your entire knowledge management system? The organization structure plays a very important role, because that is the one that actually gives the provides the authority to implement your knowledge management strategies within the organization. And how is it that you're actually responding? What kind of decisions are these bodies taking when you're responding to external customers. People skills and competencies is very important, because what kind of people who believe in the knowledge management system, it's most often than not we've noticed that when you have core KM groups, we found that people from delivery are picked up, people from pre-sales are taken into these teams, which is good. But these people have to be committed to knowledge management as a practice, because they need to understand why it is important to ensure that the knowledge assets are, constantly being shared, and from where, what are the different sources in which the knowledge assets are actually flowing into a central system, why people need to use it, and why is it, so what is the level of collaboration that is required and contribution that is required from employees in a given context to ensure that we have knowledge at the right time at the right place. Now, so these become the enablers to ensuring that you have a good KM system, and on top of which you have a good governance mechanism to ensure its sustenance. So again, reiterating the same thing, is this, is just to understand a little more on the game governance part of it. So basically, we're saying it's a set of underlying roles, policies, guiding principles that help us to strategize much better, that will help us to implement and sustain the game practice across the organization. All in all, this becomes the heart of your entire knowledge management system. Game governance has to have a top level framework and mechanism. It cannot be done in part, it cannot be done working on silos. It has to be looked at from a top level. It has to be aligned to your business at all times, because if you don't do that, then again, knowledge management becomes a one-off activity. It's another initiative in the organization that is bound to die out in very short time. And this we have seen in several organizations that we encounter and we deal with on a regular basis. So that becomes, so game governance to us becomes the driving point. Okay, and this always tells us that it's not, transformation is definitely not about having a technology platform in place or a set of processes in place. Right? So we're always looking at, if you have a great set of build outcomes, build measures, what is the expected outcome, and are we able to measure the outcome? So, how do we know what kind of assets are being used in what context, at what time, and whether they are being done so in the right time and the right place. So how is knowledge management governance actually helping us to prioritize and helping us in our decision making? How do we know that a certain department or a function within the organization is not actually able to churn out the type and the quality of data that is required, on a day-to-day basis, that has to be used in a given context within the organization? How do I know which unit, which department, which function is actually contributing its best, and ensuring, while its contribution is there, what is the kind of usage of that data on a regular basis? So what are my measures that we are putting in place of there, and how, having put my measures in place, how am I actually evaluating, how am I reviewing the progress of these measures on a regular basis? So can I put a certain set of measures only for a particular department or a process or a function, or is it for a particular business context? What is it that I should measure? What is it that I should not measure? So these are questions that we keep asking and keep enhancing and evaluating our process, and performance, KM performance measures on a regular basis. At the end of it, what is the kind of benefit that I would like, as a knowledge management practice, to ensure to my to the team, to the organization, and of course to the end customers? Can I, in the process, then again we are looking at whether the governance part of it is going to help us. How many resources can we employ, to ensure that the systems are in place? Okay, am I also constantly ensuring that I have a risk register which will tell me at every given point in time, have I looked at this particular one? There could be an opportunity, and this could be a high risk opportunity here. So what are my mitigation, risk strategies that I have put in place? So am I constantly looking at revisiting my knowledge management risk register? So that's something that we keep doing on a regular basis. So this is done, of course, we have our targets for that. We keep reviewing it with our internal quality processes to keep checking on these things. Okay. So, and at the end of it, have I considered why, part of it and the how of knowledge management to ensure that I have a good, effective knowledge management governance in place. Divakar will just run you through the tech and game strategy.
Yeah, thank you, Bhuvneshwari, for your view on this knowledge management and the importance of governance in this the KM context. So my name is Divakar, and I'm the senior project manager and consultant, techno-functional consultant for implementation of this practice at Tech Mahindra. I hope I am audible and clear. So in continuation to what Bhuvneshwari is trying to project about this knowledge management and the importance of governance, the slide number 9 is trying to give you a picture on the kind of framework that is being implemented within the organization, and it will slightly differ, and some of these components might get added and removed based on the context in organization to organization, given their needs and importance on what they focus on the knowledge management context. So here, as she mentioned earlier, knowledge management is the crux and the core component of any business organization which is completely customer centric and delivery based organization. So in this context, knowledge management not only speaks about having a certain kind of policies and practices in place, but also, and it's not just about the technology platform having a centralized document management system, but it should also have some kind of standard frameworks on how these knowledge management systems are being implemented. So if you see this slide number 9, it is giving a high level view on the kind of framework and what it actually focuses on. Its knowledge management system having a centralized KM in place focuses on the reusability of the existing knowledge. Again, when we speak about the knowledge, it's again the information or the kind of experience or the knowledge that got generated over a period of time servicing different kinds of customers in different geographies and different business contexts. And the information that got, the knowledge that got generated is making it available at a centralized repository where, given in a given business context, the organization is trying to reuse that existing knowledge instead of doing it or reinventing the wheel from scratch again. So knowledge management system focuses on the reusability, and again having the kind of quality artifacts in place, implementing some kind of measures on what kind of knowledge is being captured into that centralized KMS and what kind of review and review mechanisms when happen on that particular knowledge asset before it's made available in the central portal. And again, at the same point, we should also be looking at how that knowledge is being reused and who are the people who are frequently visiting that knowledge assets and whether that knowledge that we are making it available is useful or not. That means having some kind of rating mechanisms and collecting, executing some kind of surveys in different business contexts to ensure that the knowledge that is available is useful and it is meeting the needs of the customers in the context, both internal and external customers. But as you know, it's all about knowledge management, is all about the knowledge and the intellectual capital. That means the people, since we are into this service-oriented organization, that means we are delivering services to the customers, and people plays the important role, and they become the key factor in the service. So the experience which they are gaining and capturing that experience, because people move out of the organization for various reasons, and the experience what they have gained over a period of time executing projects and capturing that kind of knowledge is the most important thing, which is nothing but the tacit knowledge part here. And coming to this, I mean, the next point is KM change management, and what kind of having a centralized KM system and the frameworks and the policies in place, what kind of change management procedures you follow, and what kind of improvements you do, what based on, I mean, to the existing systems, and what kind of frameworks you follow, and what kind of policies you follow in this change management is also most important thing. And it's not just about having a central KMS and assets in place. We should also have some mechanism to promote this information and proliferate and kind of the best practices what is available here. In order to do all these things, on the top, there is a top level layer is nothing but the KM governance. Yeah.
So when we're looking at, how this entire thing, we're looking at facilitating knowledge management. And again, we're looking at it from a governance perspective. We have a set of, frameworks on how we actually measuring, the explicit and tacit knowledge, assets that flow into the organization's repositories and that get shared on a regular basis. So there are a set of measures that govern, the contributions and usage of, these particular assets. We have also a model in place, and several of you already have the knowledge management frameworks in place. On similar lines, we have one again with a set of performance metrics that help us to gauge where we are and where do we want to actually go. So we have, of course, on a regular basis we measure our actions versus targets and stuff like that. And then we have rewards and recognition framework constituted. But again, we utilize it in terms of, whether, we want to do it as a point-based system, for example, in our communities of practice, or do we want to do it in terms of an actual award, mechanism, awards that we want to give out to our employees during, certain times such as context, or, whether we want to do. So it's very contextual, and we take it, from there. So we have a set of ongoing activities during which we all our our rewards and recognition systems actually play a very vital role. Like Diwakar mentioned, knowledge management change management is the most vital thing to ensure that all the employees within the organization are actually using the knowledge management system. So there is a lot of promotion and branding that gets done on the different initiatives, on what are the different artifacts that are there, what type of reusables that are being collated on a regular process, who are the different subject matter experts in a particular contest, and things like that. So a lot of user training which happens online, a lot of user training happens during meetings, through webcasts, webinars, flow walks, and so we have a huge change management process put into place, to ensure that knowledge management is actually being practiced across the different business functions and in different departments, and across domains within Tech Mahindra. Okay, so all this is actually helping us to ensure that we have a very robust and dynamic knowledge management sharing culture which is happening within the organization. When we look back on the last couple of years to what we are now, we've progressed a lot, and each month, each quarter, we are making process improvements to ensure that we have process hooks into several different business contexts, whether it's sales, whether it's pre-sales, or whether it is delivery, or whether it's into the alliances and things like that, and how we're actually automating all these to ensure there is a smooth flow of knowledge, and knowledge is getting actually used in the right place and at the right time. Okay, so this is what is happening at from a TechM perspective.
So, followed by the kind of strategy that is being followed at Tech Mahindra, And in the context of the KM governance, we already discussed that people are the core component. That means the intellectual capital is the core component of the knowledge management system. And here, people in the sense, it can be, they play different roles here. But since if it is a delivery-based organization executing projects in the, for example, if you take Tech Mahindra, it is delivering services to customers, projects, or IT-based projects and services to the customers. And here, the associates or the employees play the most vital role, and the knowledge they have generated and they have the experience that they have captured during their period of work is most important thing. And capturing that knowledge is also most important. While in line with capturing the knowledge, availability of this knowledge, showcasing it to the external world. That means, showcasing it to the other business units is also most important. So, having said that, what kind of knowledge that can be showcased across the units? Again, is it a confidential form of knowledge? That means it's where people can have this restricted access knowledge areas, and or the knowledge that can be shared across the business organization, across the organization. So classification of this kind of knowledge and governing, having governance policies in place to manage this kind of information. That means shareable and non-shareable information is also forms a part of the KM governance model here. So the picture, what is being depicted here in slide number 10 points to be slide number 11 points to be considered for KM governance. So the first thing talks about the people, who are nothing but the capital, intellectual capital of the organization, where either the deliveries, it's a common, but it depends on the business context. It's a delivery people or the sales or pre-sales guys, all the functions are the different business functions. That includes both HR, finance, learning, all this people included, marketing, etc. And the operations team, who are nothing but the PMOs in the organization. These are the broad level scenarios that we try to depict here, given our experience and the practice what we do in the organization, Tech Mahindra, and what kind of roles they play in the governance part. If you take this delivery team and the organizational level owners, they are the core group that drives the KM knowledge management across the business functions. And core group in the sense, there can be a CXO team, all the business leaders of the IBG business unit heads, who are the who stands, who lead that knowledge management practice within their functions. And in order to do this, leadership buy-in is also most important thing, which Bhunesh was trying to project in the previous slides. Next to that, there are initiative owners. Like in our context, it's knowledge management, but given the market demand and the services that are required by the customers, each and every organization comes up with different business initiatives or business transformation initiatives, I would say, like industrialization or automation or knowledge management or for Lean Six Sigma, like just to note. And these are different set of business initiatives that are implemented in our organization. And each and every initiative owner is also responsible for this knowledge management, and they play the vital role and lead this business transformation initiative in the given context. Next to that, there will be organization level evangelists, or you can said as KM evangelists, or unit level champions and the subject matter experts. All these, there are the high level roles that are being played in an organization and they are the people who are the extended arms of the centralized and knowledge management function, who forms a part of the governance model. Again, as I in Tech Mahindra, yeah. And next to that, one of the attributes that we can be look at is authority. As I said, when the information gets generated, what kind of information can be shared within across the organization and what cannot be shared. Whether it is a shared one, then where you are going to, how you are going to sanitize or capture that information before it is being shared. What kind of roles are the governance validation mechanisms in place to share that knowledge. So that again comes to the centralized knowledge system or the distributed knowledge system. And apart from that, in the context of the knowledge management, there will be different, it's again a strategic initiative in each and every organization, which helps the organization for business excellence. It's one of the business transformation initiative, I would say. So there are broadly 3-level roles here. I mean, they're depicted here. One is the KM core group, and the other one is the business units, and again the quality consultant team. So each and every, I mean, as you all know, that knowledge management or the central KM team maintains and controls the knowledge management infrastructure. Again, it's again the technology platform plus the practice and the kind of governance policies, procedures they come up and they define and come up for the sustainability of the knowledge management practice within the organization. Again, when we speak about the business units, they are the business heads and the CXO teams who strategize and proliferate the various initiatives, business initiatives or the business transformation initiatives for implementing across the organization. So, whatever, next to the 3 roles, whatever I have mentioned here, there can be one more role like Chief Strategy Officer, CSO, who looks at identifying the business needs of the organization in various contexts according to the market demands, and he tries to implement those initiatives within the organization. So some of those initiatives are we try to depict in the next picture, in the slide number 12. I'll come to that. And it's not about having these policies and practices and the kind of technology platform in place, but having a centralized knowledge management system will not suffice. On the top of it, we need to keep on monitoring the practice, how it is being implemented and how people are participating in that, where are we lagging, and what best can be done to remove that, so that to remove that lag and enable people to participate in this knowledge management system. So because at any point of time, people are most important and they are the crux of the knowledge management system. And that is how the knowledge is getting generated here. So having some kind of measures and metrics in place to monitor the availability of information and usage of information. Having a system with lots amount of knowledge, but usage is also most important, so that coming up, monitoring is then existing knowledge on a regular basis on what kind of knowledge is getting into the KMS system and how it is being used, or is that existing knowledge sufficient for the business needs of the for the needs of these delivery teams, etc. Such kind of processes should be in place as a part of the governance, and publishing some kind of reports and dashboards on a frequent basis to give the business units an understanding of their participation in the knowledge management practice. Maybe one time or the other, but not now or the other, they will review those information and they will make themselves participate in this knowledge management practice. Again, coming up with, for implementing any kind of strategic initiative, definitely there will be lots of risks that can be, that will be there. So having a strategy, it's not sufficient, but identifying the kind of risks that might encounter in implementing a practice like KM, and then revisiting that, having a centralized risk register and revisiting those risks on a frequent basis and updating them with the help of quality consulting team during the kind of knowledge management audits or the frequent quarterly audits to ensure that the practice is sustained in the organization.
So actually, when we put the knowledge management body in place, and we had our CXO level teams and we had our business leaders participating, and each one of them actually proliferating the knowledge management program across the organization, we found that there was a larger buy-in from the different departments and functions, and we found that today the ones who were actually resisting the program a year or two ago and actually participating and actually coming forward on their own and wanting to be part of this knowledge management program. So it's not just about them coming and asking us, listen, can you give us a SharePoint site, or can you, help us create a few document libraries to put a certain thing or put a workflow in place, as much as it is asking us to actually, come, with them and to talk to their customers and explain to them, what we are doing, how we are doing it, how we are actually helping in, propagating knowledge management practice within the customer environment, within the delivery centers and things like that. So we have seen a good progress, having established the very robust knowledge management governance in place?
So slide number 12 is trying to give you a picture on this. Yeah. Any questions, please, at this moment? Because we have 10 minutes for your questions. So if you have any questions, please send out a message so that we can take it up. So eventually, so I'd like to mention more about this slide number 12 on how knowledge management is playing and the governance and the kind of governance role in the business transformation initiatives. So these are not the the final ones, but because each and every organization, given the business requirement and market demand, there can be n number of business transformation initiatives running in the across the organization. So we have picked up some of the samples which are commonly followed as per the current trends in the industry, and we try to depict here in this picture. For example, industrialization. So which refers to, so what is industrialization about? It's about kind of best practices that are followed. It's not about only, it's not good practices, it's practices that followed and kind of benefits. And an organization has to realize that by doing the practices, delivering services, by reusing them and delivering services to the customers. So all those best practices are captured, and they're going to be, they look at reusing the best practices, term called best practices here, so that that brings down delivery efficiency, improves delivery efficiency and improves the reusability of the organization, and also brings down the service delivery time for a particular organization. This is in the context of industrialization. So what kind of role governance, kind of game governance is playing in this context? One is, it's not about, who is, capturing the best practices, and who is people who are pointing them best practices, because it's all about the people or the project managers and the delivery teams who have delivered the product. But at the same time, governance, having this kind of governance system in a sense, people, central knowledge management team and the quality consulting team along with the delivery assurance teams, they will come into picture and they will see that the practice is really best practice that we can be classified this under industrialization measure, and what kind of benefits we have realized using these best practices. That kind of monitoring should be there, and also identifying those best practices and making it for further use across the business units. So also we need to check tracking those reusability of the existing assets, that means those industrialization assets, and then some of different kinds of measures reusability. Maybe. And the next one is different kinds of automation initiatives and the delivery excellence and assurance initiatives. Shortly called as a DEA, which now Tech Mahindra has coined the word like ACT, AQT, automation, quality, and time. These are some of the business transformation initiatives which Tech Mahindra has rolled out as per the market demand, for the better reusability of the existing knowledge and improvement of the business. So here also you can see digital enterprise solutions and the enterprise project management tools. So I'll quickly give you a glimpse of what is this EPM is all about. So EPM looks at, it's not about executing the project, but how best we are tracking that project and monitoring the project on a regular basis. It's again a part of the automation initiative, we can say. So rolling out enterprise project management tools of given in a given business context across the organization, that will help the project management team to better track and monitor the projects, so that it will create a transparency of project management and the tracking at any given point of time. And also it will help the project management team to take the action, appropriate action, when something is going red and something is not being looked at during the initiation of the project, or something that got missed out during the project initiation. Those areas can be looked at and they will be tracked and taken for closure successfully. with better project management practices.
If you look at the point 3, and we are the focus is on building up the excellence and assurance in the delivery for our services. So that becomes the kind of the core thing when you're looking at building reusability of our service offerings in terms of the industrialization effort that we're doing. What is the level of automation and process improvement and automation that we are focusing on? How are we actually looking and evaluating our enterprise project management systems, or how are we actually putting a lot of life into our digital enterprise solutions? So how are we actually measuring, monitoring, and assuring our, the delivery excellence in whatever we do today? So that kind of becomes the core of, of the actual governance, mechanism here. So there are different parts that knowledge management is actually playing here. Of course, how are we monitoring the flow of knowledge assets? First of all, how are we discovering the kind of knowledge assets that that are benchmarkable, that have to come in? What are the measures and metrics that we put over there, to ensure that the particular asset is benchmarkable and it can be and has been, first of all, reused, in given context. So once that is done, then what is the mechanism to ensure that it's made available in a given format that can be easily replicated across the organization? Now, this is not a one-time activity that is happening, but this is a sustained activity because this has become a part of the knowledge management governance framework, and this sustenance is on a quarterly basis. So the review of this entire thing framework is happening on almost on a quarterly basis. There are reports and dashboards that are being shared by the different contributors, by the different departments engaging in this entire exercise. There are review mechanisms constituted from the CXO level, the department head level, and the program project managers and everybody who are participating in this particular program. So there's a lot of leadership, first of all, buy-in to each one of the initiatives, which are becoming the core focus when we're responding effectively to market scenarios. So how are we actually building this excellence? So there are top level umbrella frameworks under which all the rest of these initiatives actually come under. So KM is playing a very, very vital part, important part to ensure we are discovering the right set of assets. How and where have these, what are the different sources from where these knowledge assets are actually being, coming through, from which different accounts, which different programs, which different processes, who is actually helping to build that, whether it's a competency, what kind of domain knowledge that we have, what kind of solutions, frameworks, methodologies that we're actually building, and how much of this is hidden so far. So all this is something that is being considered and and constantly being measured. So that's the good part of it. Okay. So do you have any questions for us? Because I think now this is the last slide, and we've kind of covered what we had to say in this. In essence, knowledge management governance is the key to ensuring that you have a fantastic knowledge management system in place, implementing it, going by your knowledge management strategy, and ensuring that it gets sustained in the long run. I think if you have that overarching framework and you're able to push the framework with a certain set of authority, process, policies, guidelines, and standards, compliance, and of course the KPIs, measures, metrics that you have in place, you will ensure that we have a good KMS. So that's it from our end, but do you have any questions that you would like to ask us?
So in short, we would say that knowledge management practice will sustain if you have proper set of governance measures.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very important because knowledge management governance is basically the heart of the entire game system. So it's not enough to have just a simple process in place. It's definitely not enough to have a document management system or a content management system. Yeah, you need to have, and we're looking at CMS or DMS, we're talking talking about information architectures, we're talking about taxonomies. Metadata then becomes the heart of the system. That's different. But if you're looking at the overarching knowledge management practice, it is the governance that sustains. That is the sustaining factor. So if that is there, then we run.
Okay. I think
yeah, so Jose, that's it from our end. If the participants would like to reach out to us, you can share our email IDs and we'll be happy to get in touch. So thanks all of you for participating. Look forward to the next sessions.